Ethan came home early that evening, his heart light with the thought of surprising Claire. He'd picked up her favorite Thai food, and a small bouquet of lily, her favorite. The key turned in the lock as it always had, but something felt wrong the moment he stepped inside. The apartment, once filled with laughter and the scent of her perfume, now echoed with silence. Half the shelves were empty. Boxes lined the hallway. Claire stood by the window, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You're home early," she said flatly. There was no warmth in her voice, no trace of the woman who used to run into his arms. Ethan stared at the half-packed living room, confusion knotting in his chest. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. She sighed, as if bored. "I'm keeping the apartment. You can crash with your parents." The words hit him like a blow. For a moment, Ethan thought he'd misheard. "What are you talking about, Claire?" It's over," she interrupted, eyes cold and detached. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." He searched her face for emotion, for a flicker of guilt or pain, but there was nothing. Just a chilling calmness that suggested this wasn't a spontaneous decision. It had been planned, rehearsed. His mind raced. Had she met someone else? Had everything they built together been a lie? When he tried to touch her arm, she stepped back sharply, avoiding his eyes. "Please, just leave, Ethan." He dropped the food bag to the floor. The scent of curry and crushed flowers filled the air as he stood frozen, his world collapsing in a single sentence. Somewhere deep down, he knew this wasn't just a breakup. It was the beginning of something far darker. Ethan hadn't stepped into his old room in years. The faint smell of dust and mothballs greeted him as he pushed the door open, suitcase dragging behind him. The posters from his teenage years still clung to the walls, faded and curling at the corners. Everything felt smaller, like the room had shrunk while he was gone. He dropped his bag onto the bed and sat down. Staring blankly at the pale blue wallpaper his mother had refused to change. Humiliation burned in his chest. A grown man, nearly 30, crawling back to his parents' house after his girlfriend threw him out. The sound of his mother's soft humming from the kitchen made it worse, too gentle, too pitying. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. That night, Ethan lay awake, his mind replaying the breakup on an endless loop. The look in Claire's eyes, cold, detached, almost rehearsed, haunted him. Had there been signs? The late nights, the secretive texts, the sudden distance. Each memory twisted into a new form of pain that as he unpacked the next morning, he noticed something odd among his things, a small box that once held their shared keys. One was missing, a silver keychain engraved with the initials VH. Claire had found it months ago, claiming it belonged to her former boss, Victor Hale. A man, she said, was just a friend. Ethan hadn't thought much of it then, but now the absence of that keychain gnawed at him. He sat on the edge of his bed, the morning light spilling across the floorboards, and felt a chill crawl down his spine. Maybe it was just coincidence, or maybe Claire's betrayal ran deeper than he'd imagined. Doubt turned to obsession. He needed answers. The first message came late at night. Ethan was scrolling through job listings on his cracked phone, when the screen suddenly flickered and a notification appeared from an unknown number. "You don't know what she's capable of." He stared at it for several seconds, his pulse quickening. Probably a wrong number, he told himself. But then another text arrived. "She's not who you think she is." The messages stopped there, leaving him with a hollow sense of dread. He tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. The next morning, unable to shake the unease, Ethan dug through his bag and found Claire's old work laptop. She had left it behind in the rush, tucked between books and a half-packed sweater. The logical part of him said to return it, but curiosity overpowered guilt. He opened it. At first, everything seemed normal. Emails, reports, travel itineraries. But when he searched for her name in hidden system folders, he found something buried deep, encrypted files labeled with random numbers. Inside were bank records showing large money transfers, some in his name. There were screenshots of fake profiles, invoices for hotel stays in cities she'd never told him she visited, and emails to someone simply signed V. Ethan's stomach churned. Had Claire been living a double life? Or worse, had she used him as part of something illegal? He clicked open one final folder inside. A photo appeared. It was Claire, sitting at a cafe with a man in a tailored suit. Victor Hale, her supposed ex-boss. The date stamp was only 2 weeks before she ended things. Ethan closed the laptop, hands trembling. The messages weren't random. Someone wanted him to know the truth. But why send them now? And who was warning him? Ethan hadn't planned to go back to the apartment building. Just walking up the familiar stairs made his chest tighten. The smell of freshly mopped floors and the hum of the old elevator brought back 1,000 memories. Laughter echoing down the hall. Claire's voice teasing him about leaving his shoes by the door. Now, it all felt ghostly. Like walking through the remains of a life that no longer belonged to him. He knocked on Mrs. Linton's door. The elderly woman had lived across from them for years, sharp-eyed, kind-hearted, and always aware of everyone's business. When she opened the door, her eyes widened with sympathy. "Ethan dear, I was wondering when you'd come by." He forced a small smile. "Hi Mrs. Linton, I just needed to pick up a few things. And maybe ask you something." Her expression shifted, curiosity flickering. "It's about Claire, isn't it?" Ethan nodded. "Did you see her with anyone?" Before she left, Mrs. Linton sighed and motioned him inside. The living room smelled of chamomile tea and lavender. "There was a man," she said finally. "Tall, grey suit, black Mercedes parked outside. They were arguing, not shouting, but it was tense. She looked terrified. Ethan, tears down her face. I almost went out to help, but he grabbed her arm and she told me to stay inside." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Did you see his face?" She frowned, thinking. Not clearly. But he had that rich man confidence. The kind who thinks he owns the world. Victor Hale, it had to be him. As Ethan thanked her and turned to leave, Mrs. Linton added softly, "Whatever you think she did, dear, maybe it wasn't her choice." Those words lingered, cutting deeper than he expected. The morning started like any other. Ethan brewed himself a cup of bitter coffee and opened his laptop. Determined to keep searching through Claire's encrypted files. But when he tried to log into his online banking account, an error message appeared. Access denied. Account under review. Confused, he refreshed the page. The same message flashed again. Moments later, his phone buzzed with a call from the bank's fraud department. "Mr. Carter." The voice on the other end said sternly, "We need to discuss several suspicious transactions made under your name." Ethan's pulse quickened. "What transactions?" "I haven't. Over $80,000 were wired to offshore accounts last month. We've received formal complaints. Authorities have been notified." His breath caught. He barely had a few $100s left in his savings. Before he could argue, another call came through this time, an unknown number. A man's voice, deep and calm, spoke a single chilling sentence. "You should have stayed quiet." Then the line went dead. By afternoon, 2 investigators arrived at his parents' house. His mother's worried eyes followed every question they asked. "Do you have any knowledge of these funds? Did you authorize these transfers?" Ethan could only shake his head, numb. When they left, he opened Claire's stolen laptop again, retracing the hidden folders he'd found earlier. That's when he saw his name listed as the account holder for every offshore transfer. His social security number, his signature, all perfectly replicated. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a trap, carefully laid long before the breakup. Every digital thread led back to him. Ethan slammed the laptop shut, panic clawing at his chest. Claire hadn't only ended their relationship, she'd destroyed his life. Or someone had used her to do it. Either way, he was now their target. For days, Ethan tracked every trace of Claire he could find: old phone records, social media check-ins, bank notifications. Then, one night, a credit alert appeared under her name, linked to a new luxury apartment downtown. It was the first real lead he'd had in weeks. The moment he saw the address, his heart raced. If she was living there, she hadn't gone far, just far enough to hide in plain sight. He waited outside the building the next morning, sitting in his car as sunlight reflected off the glass towers. Expensive cars rolled in and out of the underground garage. When Claire finally appeared, dressed in a tailored beige coat and dark glasses, Ethan almost didn't recognize her. She looked different, thinner, paler, but somehow stronger. He stepped out quickly, calling her name. Claire. She froze. Her sunglasses slipped slightly as her eyes widened in shock. Ethan, what are you doing here? I need answers, he said, his voice shaking. You framed me. The bank, the money. She glanced around nervously, lowering her voice. You shouldn't be here. You don't understand what you've walked into. Then make me understand. He shouted, his desperation echoing through the quiet street. Claire's lips trembled, torn between fear and guilt. It's not what you think, she whispered. I never meant for this to happen. Please, just go home before it's too late. Before Ethan could respond, a sleek black car pulled up beside the curb. The tinted window rolled down just enough for him to glimpse a man's silhouette, composed, watching. Claire's entire body stiffened. Is that him? Ethan demanded. Claire took a shaky step back. Run, she said under her breath. If you love me, just run. Then she turned and disappeared into the car, leaving Ethan staring after her, his heart pounding as dread settled deep in his gut. Whoever that man was, Claire wasn't just guilty, she was terrified. The next morning, Ethan tried calling Claire again and again, but her number went straight to voicemail. By noon, he drove back to her apartment building, only to find her mailbox overflowing and the door sealed with police tape. Panic rippled through him. He cornered the doorman, demanding answers, but the man only shook his head. She left 2 nights ago, he said. Didn't say where. Looked scared. That single word haunted Ethan, scared. What had frightened her so badly that she would vanish without a trace? Within days, the news broke online. Local woman missing, possible fraud connection. The photos of Claire smiling beside Ethan from happier days now circulated with captions branding them as suspects. Reporters called him a person of interest. Strangers sent threats. The world turned on him overnight. Then, late one night, his phone buzzed with a hidden number. A single text appeared. Don't trust anyone, even the ones helping you. The message had no sender ID, but Ethan knew it was Claire. The words were unmistakably hers. He read it over and over, his stomach twisting with dread. Who was she warning him about? The police. The bank investigators. Someone closer. Hours later, headlights swept across his parents' driveway. 2 unmarked cars stopped outside, men in suits stepping out. Ethan's instincts screamed danger. Grabbing his backpack and the flash drive of Claire's encrypted files, he slipped out through the back door before they could knock. He didn't know where he was going. Only that staying meant being silenced. The night swallowed him as he fled down the dark highway. His heart pounding, every shadow feeling like a threat. Claire was gone, but she was still protecting him, and now, her warning had become his only chance to survive. For weeks, Ethan followed the faintest digital breadcrumbs, anonymous emails, hidden IP trails, fragments of data Claire had buried within encrypted folders. Every clue pointed to one name, Victor Hale, the man who'd once been her boss, and possibly her captor. Late one rainy night, Ethan drove north to an isolated estate, listed under one of Victor's shell companies. The place was surrounded by high walls, security cameras glinting under the storm's flashes. From a ridge overlooking the property, Ethan watched black sedans come and go. Men in suits exchanging briefcases under the cover of darkness. Whatever Victor was running, it was more than corporate fraud. It was an empire built on secrets, blackmail, and stolen identities. When the guards changed shifts, Ethan slipped through a side gate and broke into a small office building near the main house. Inside, rows of filing cabinets and computer servers hummed quietly. He plugged in Claire's flash drive and waited. One by one, the hidden files decrypted, and what he found nearly brought him to his knees. There were fake IDs, offshore ledgers, and transaction records, linking Victor to dozens of false accounts, some under Claire's name, others under Ethan's. Claire hadn't framed him out of malice. She'd been forced to use his information to protect him, hiding her involvement until she could expose Victor herself. Among the digital chaos, Ethan found a message labeled simply for E. It was a video. Claire's face appeared, pale and tearful. "If you're seeing this," she said, her voice shaking, "it means Victor found out. I tried to stop him, Ethan. I tried to keep you safe. Please. Don't hate me." Ethan's breath hitched as thunder rolled outside. The truth hit him harder than any betrayal ever could. Claire hadn't left him for greed or deception. She had sacrificed everything to shield him from the monster she once worked for. The rain hadn't stopped for days, soaking the city in a constant grey haze. Ethan hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours, but his mind was clear to clear. Every clue, every file he'd uncovered pointed to one horrifying truth. Victor Hale was still out there, and Claire was alive, but being used as leverage. He couldn't go to the police. Too many were already bought off by Victor's money. Instead, he reached out to one of Claire's old colleagues, a quiet systems analyst named Marcy who owed Claire her life. Together, they devised a plan. Expose Victor using his own encrypted data. Leak everything to the authorities and the media simultaneously. But they only had one shot if Victor caught wind of it. Both Ethan and Claire would vanish. The night of the sting. Ethan met Marcy in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. His hands trembled as he inserted the final drive into her laptop. On the screen, a progress bar crept forward slow, agonizingly slow. Then headlights swept across the walls. A car door slammed. A voice echoed through the darkness. "You really thought you could beat me, Mr. Carter?" Victor stepped out of the shadows, immaculate as ever, holding a gun. Two men flanked him. He smirked. "You've been busy? Pity you won't live long enough to see it go live." Ethan's blood turned to ice. "Where's Claire?" he demanded. Victor's smirk deepened. "Safe, for now. You finish that upload, and she disappears forever." Ethan hesitated, torn between love and justice. Then he saw the small red recording light on Marcy's laptop camera. The confession was being streamed live. Victor noticed too late. Shouts erupted outside as sirens blew. Ethan exhaled shakily. He had just destroyed the man who destroyed his life. But the cost of victory was a weight he wasn't sure he could bear. Months passed, like years. Ethan's time behind bars was a blur of sleepless nights, court hearings, and whispered threats. He had become a symbol, a man falsely accused, yet too broken to care about redemption. When the truth finally surfaced, when Victor Hale's empire collapsed and the authorities cleared Ethan's name, there was no triumph, only silence. When he was released, he didn't know where to go. His parents tried to welcome him back, but the house felt suffocating, filled with echoes of the past. One gray afternoon, he found himself standing once again before the apartment building he once called home. The familiar brick walls, the cracked stairwell. Even the creaking door of it felt like a ghost reaching out to him. Inside, everything was covered in dust. The faint smell of lilies still lingered, as if time had refused to move on. He wandered through the rooms, touching the furniture, tracing the lines of the life he had lost. That's when he noticed something strange, a loose panel in the wall behind the bookshelf. Gently, he pried it open. Inside was a small envelope, yellowed and fragile. His hands trembled as he unfolded the letter inside. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't make it back. I never stopped loving you. I kept the apartment so you'd have a home when it's over. I wish I could see your face one last time, to tell you that everything I did was to save you. Please forgive me." Tears blurred the ink as he sank to the floor. Claire had died helping the authorities bring Victor down, trading her life for his freedom. Yet, in her final act of love, she had left him the one thing she knew he'd need most, a place to start over, and the truth to finally set him free.